back to my workshop. My name is Robert. This is part 2 in the series on the Ainjest rapid threading attachment. We'll pick up from where we left off last time and get on with putting it back together. So let's get on with it. Well, there we are. That's what it looks like once it's been scrubbed in white spirit. Outside, the old workmate and a tin of white spirit there. Lovely. 2 days after disassembly, and I've got the main body casting there and the cover there cleaned up, stripped down and painted. The other block just down there is the bed clamp for the taper turning attachment that I'm painting, taking the opportunity to paint it at the same time whilst the paint's out. And now everything's cleaned up, a chance to inspect each of the parts, work out what needs changing, what's good, what's not. Bearings, for example, that's absolutely knackered. That one's not much better. These are dry as well, so they should spin freely, and they're just rubbish. Some parts, like the handle, have cleaned up absolutely fantastically. Look really nice now. The main slide, which carries the half nut, that's cleaned up very well. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, most of it's okay. There is a good amount of wear on this half nut. Now, if I offer this up to the lead screw, it does actually engage quite well, and it would appear that it's just not been engaged deeply enough to get a good drive, and it's been wearing on a small part of the tooth. If I need to make one, I have some bronze to make it from. Don't know what grade of bronze it is, but it's bronze. A piece of bronze to make this from. All I could find was a cylinder which has got to be at least 1.5 inches diameter, and you're looking at £25, maybe, what's that, $30, just for the chunk of bronze. This gear, now this is the gear that drives the whole thing, senses where the lead screw is. This has also got quite a lot of wear. Now this does have a lot of play in it. Now I am seriously considering making a new one of these, as I've got all the right tools and everything to make it. It's about 1/2 inch thick. I've got some bronze that will do this. It's got a 1/2 inch bore in it. From what I can ascertain, the gear will be a circular pitch of 1/4 inch. That's a given, because it engages on a lead screw with a 1/4 inch pitch. So, and that works out to about 12.57 dp. So you won't buy a cutter that will do that exactly, but we have the shaper, which I can convince that to cut one exactly what I want. It's a helical, it's about a 4-degree helical to match the helix angle of the lead screw, and I can do that. That's easy enough. The holes, where there should only be one hole but there are 2 holes, are for the pin, which allows it to be indexed around on this. I presume that's to get it into the right position, so that when this engages, allows this part to move up, that the timing of this is correct with the lead screw. And there are, I believe, 15 positions around here, so this is slightly off from the factor of 4 that you need for that. The pin that I've driven out looks like that. That's a very sorry state. It's a 1/8 diameter pin, so I'm not very keen on that. I think that irrespective, that needs changing. So I need some 1/8 silver steel to fix that, and that could be done at exactly the same time as this gear is remade. Everything else looks in good condition, and that's good. That's just what I want. I might remake this label. I might use a piece of aluminium and then use some toner transfer paper to transfer some laser jet ink onto it, and then lacquer it for protection as a means to generating that. The other, pick it up, the other label looks okay, that's fine. They were held on with some small aluminium rivets. I might just use some very small drive screws to hold it back on. So in part one I made a bit of a point that I was going to put roll pins into the Ainjest when I reassembled it, and then I looked through all my reamers and I discovered that actually I've got quite a few taper pin reamers. So I used these to clean out the hole. We've got a 5/32, this one's a 3/16, 7/32, and I've got a couple of quarter ones. One that I bought. These ones I bought in a job lot of reamers, and they just happened to be in there, so they came in very useful. I was put off because I hate making taper pins. However, if I zoom you over here, they're actually fairly cheap to buy, so just get packs of them. Now, the original taper pin would have been, I think they were 3/16, and obviously when you go to fit a new one, it's going to sink in far too far. So what I ended up doing was to buy larger size ones but longer ones, because they're all the same taper. Somewhere along the line this one will be the same size as you want. You just got to cut it down. So a bit of hacksawing, make up a little bush, which drill it through with a suitable starter hole, and then stuff a reamer through it, a taper pin reamer, and then you can pop the taper pin in there, and nice and secure, give it a little clonk with a hammer. You can then machine it nice and clean on the end so that it doesn't look like a dog's breakfast, and it's all ready to go back in. The time's come to put this lot back together. Now I'm going to start with this part, which fits in with this, on this spindle and this spring. I've already reamed out the taper pin hole, and I've cut a new taper pin to fit in there. The difficulty is this taper pin has to ride inside this bore that you can't see because my fingers are too big. It has to go inside here. Now there's very, very little clearance on this section here. So that means the pin has got to be fitted, and then it's going to have to be filed round in situ, which is going to be the awkward bit. So I'll start off by giving this a generous squirt of oil. Putting the spring on there, massaging the oil into that. Now this goes into the handle as such. and the arrow is going to have to point to the numbers. This part then goes on, and if I line that up with number 1 and line pin up with number 1, the taper pin hole will appear there. This is extremely fiddly to do because the whole thing's trying to spring apart. Right, so hopefully this is the large end of the taper pin, and we'll push the pin in there. And that fortunately keeps everything nicely spaced out. Then get a punch and drive this home. Right, before we go any further, I need to wedge this apart so that I can work on it. Okay, I found the back end of a punch, just happened to be the right size to fit in here. I've ground off the mushroom, so if I just jam that in there, that's held those apart nicely. Now I'm going to give this a good whack first to make sure that it is properly seated. One more for good luck. And now that needs filing flush. More chips coming off the brush than it removed. Right. Okay, so this is the small end. Right, let's get rid of the dust. There we go. So now this part's back together. This is the part which controls the engagement of the lead screw with the half nut. Looking at the tag, if you can just about read it, position 0 is safe, and position 4 does any whole TPI threads. So 4 TPI, 5 TPI, 10 TPI, and so on. Now, if we look at the end of this and we rotate the arrow to point to 4, you will then see that all 4 slots are clear. And these are the slots that the part of the mechanism, this part of the mechanism, is allowed to go up into, which allows the lead screw to engage with the half nut. Now, if we refer to this again, if you go to position 2, this is for half pitch threads. So this will be 6.5, 5.5, and so on. So if we go to position 2, you see now there are only 2 slots which are clear for this to engage in, and the other ones are obviously blocked off. Position 1 is for quarter TPI threads, so 2 1/4 is one example that the lathe will turn. Not that I'll use that very often. And then 0, the safe position, there are no slots available at all, so it will never engage. Next thing to do will be to fit bearings whilst it's relatively easy before everything else gets placed in there. I've got a couple of new bearings to go in there, and not forgetting the spacer that goes in between them. I'm going to wipe a bit of oil around the bore just to help things on their way. The bearings will need grease, so let's sort some of that out. I'll be using some of this. It's designed for bicycles. It's what I've got. This isn't going to be a particularly demanding application. I'm just going to work a little bit in there with my finger on both sides. I can clean off the surplus in a minute. Right, it's a bit easier. I'm going to push both the bearings in from this side. So I'll push the first one all the way down, and then I'll put the spacer in, and then I'll pop the second one in. So we have a greased up bearing. Morning. Just put the spacer in there. It can't actually go anywhere. It will walk its way to one side, but that's it. It feels like it's down. So next thing to put on, this stud needs to screw into here. It had a little bit of Loctite on it. I'll clean that off, put some more Loctite on there, and screw that in tight. Right, in order to hold this, because there's no flats or anything on it, I'm going to stick it in a collet block. It's a 3/8 one, and I'll do that up and pop it in there. Should be good enough. Oops, nudging the camera. There we go. That's not going anywhere. This is the next assembly to go on. Both of these blocks with taper pins need to come off in order for this to feed through the hole. There's a step on the shaft there so it doesn't go any further. And that can be, this part can be bolted on, and then both of these can be refitted. So put dash oil on there. I'll wipe the dash oil on there, make sure that it's well coated in there. Then that goes that way. Yeah, so this can be fitted first. Muppet. So we've got that block, put that through. Then this goes this way, I believe. And here is its taper pin. And we can put that down there. And drive it home. Bit more oil on the shaft. That goes down there, like so. I just like to put a little bit of oil on the threads. There we go. Skip round that way. This part will go on oil up that pin, and that drops on there like that. And that clip goes on there, and so now that operates that. Right, now an awkward bit. This part goes on there. I'll just put a touch of oil on things just to help it on its way. And just check the side that the taper pin goes in. It definitely goes in from the top, like that. And that is the top, that's the biggest side. So that goes on there. That goes through there. And then that needs clouting. Punch with a freshly dressed end onto the end of that taper pin. So I'm supposed to be reassembling, but this has fallen out. This is a slide, sort of a fixed wear strip that goes on the inside there, and this little pin should be fitted in like that one, and that just stops it from falling out basically. That should be all right. Just a little bit more. So in use, just slap off the vice a little bit. This has this linear bearing that runs on there. And on this side of the sliding block, there's a corresponding hard surface. A little bit of oil won't hurt. Drop that in there. Bearings are oiled up. I suppose they should be greased, shouldn't they? And then this block goes in there. This pin screws into the end of this. It becomes clear how the mechanism works. Okay, just found a suitable size spanner for the nuts. Let's oil up the gib as well. That goes in on top there. Which way round does it go? It goes definitely goes in that way. So if I drop the Allen key down the slot, I should be able to feel oh yes, that's now far too tight, that's excellent. Feels okay. It's not quite the right size spanner, is it? For those who are old enough to know about such things, this is a Weinmann brake spanner from the days when I used to have their brakes on my bicycle. There's a tiny little bit of slop in it now, which I think is about right, and it moves very freely. Now, I've no idea why, but the drawing I have from the manual does not appear to have this plate on there, which I guess limits the travel of this and just sort of keeps everything in place. Anyway, there are two little washers that go on there, spacers. Just a bit of oil on the back here. That fits over there. One screw in there. One in there. That works okay. Now we come to this piece. Now it fits into this hole here from the other side, and there is a little taper pin that hopefully is going to drive home into place and be roughly flush once we've driven it home. Again, just wipe some oil around it. Now this goes in here with the round end up. That's driven home. And then there's the taper pin hole. Of course, the taper pin's fallen into the T-slot. That will go in there. The bottom half of the taper pin appears through this hole here. Now I've cut this long enough now so that when this is driven home, if you want to get it out again, you just put a little wedge like a screwdriver in here to drive it up, and you can continue driving it up until it's loose enough. Now the original wasn't quite so, should we say, generously proportioned. Looks like I struck lucky. That looks like that's driven home very nicely. And hopefully there's just enough room to get a, yeah, I can just get a screwdriver under there, so if I need to take it out, which I hope I don't, but if I need to, I can. So this assembly is all ready to rock and roll. Now, in the fullness of time, this is where the half nut bolts on through these two screw holes here. And this can be easily dismantled and removed, presumably for replacement. Now this slide has a pair of springs that come down and they mount onto these pegs here. And again, drop the oil on each of the threads. My name was John, I'd say bollocks at this point. Change of plans in the assembly sequence. Let's take this off first. Let's take these two screws and put them somewhere safe. Dash of oil. Springy washer. And then a little bit of oil on the threads there, and I'll just drab a little bit of oil around that. And then this bolts onto there first. And then the reason for taking this off, there's a nut that goes on this side here. To lock it all down and keep an appropriate tension, I should suppose. So that seems about right. Feels quite nice. A bit of play on it, which there will be because of the spring washer. Hopefully that's okay. So now, if we get everything aligned, when this is engaged with a slot in here, as per this, and threading commences until this part here meets up with the stop, which then disengages it. Now there's a little spring . goes on there. This is where the springs go, and they're tight. Bingo. Like that. Okay, adjustment mystery solved. So to operate, you put pressure on this lever until the groove appears in the selector discs up here to allow this to move up, and then this should just catch underneath there, just push it up out of the way and it stays there. Now, if you do up this little screw, it progressively pushes this, the bottom of this sideways, and this gradually walks its way off. The tighter you do this up, the easier the release, until the point obviously where it's so easy to release that it just won't stay engaged. If you do it up, if you undo it too much, it's very difficult to actually get this to push this out of the way and engage just there. So but it's engaged, and then when this handle down here, or the stop, pushes the bit on the back, clunk, and it releases. So this goes in next. So if I just get this started, just use my finger to line up the little spacer. Right, that doesn't want to go much further. It needs pressing in, so let's press it in. All seems clear. Last piece of the puzzle. Just work out which side that's correct, because that's wrong. So that's the big side, and that side's got a little ding in it where it was pinned over originally. That goes in fine. So we'll just slide that on. That's slightly misaligned. Right, so I'll put that over a vise and drive that home properly. And there it is now, it's been driven home. Right. Now the gear has to go on here in the right position. There are 15 to choose from, and this gear is worn. So I'm going to be making a new one before I get this going and sort it out. Better. Done. The screw goes on the end there. I shan't do that up. This other half of the mechanism for clamping onto the lead screw goes on here. This long bolt goes all the way through. And sure enough, it looks like two sides of that have just been ground. You can see it's shiny there. That one's shiny, which enables that to go in that way only. There, I won't tighten that up fully at the moment. That will need adjusting. This will need to go up and down until it's in exactly the right position once the whole assembly is on the lathe. And that is that. Okay, that seems to be a reasonable place to bring proceedings to a close for this part. Next time I'll get it put back on the lathe and get it functioning. But for now, thanks for watching.